Good evening. Can everyone hear me? First off, thank you. We are all very busy people, and I know of all the places to be, we're grateful that you've taken the time to come out and hear our presentation that exhibits, to me, concern for your community, which I'm truly appreciative of. So thank you for joining us this evening. We have several distinguished speakers that will be joining us tonight, and they will help weigh in on our vision. Tonight, I'm really pleased to announce to you that upon concluding my first year in Moreno Valley as your city manager, we've had to make some very interesting, some very difficult, but some very necessary choices for us to assess the state of the economy, where we are at, and where we should be. Now, where we should be is fraught with debate, which is a very good thing. And so tonight, our intent is to unveil phase 2 of our development plan that the City Council adopted earlier in 2011. Now, we're going to go through a slideshow, but first off, let me say, when you weigh in and assess where we are at, the first slide that is before us, the challenges. When I arrived in February of 2011, the question was really, how do we create jobs? How do we do that in a blue-collar community? How do we know what the areas of expertise and areas of growth are that represent our fundamental number one issue to identify and capture for us so that those residents in our community that are on the verge of losing their homes or have already lost their homes can recognize that the Moreno Valley City Council is very committed to one thing and one thing only, and that's the creation of jobs. But then the question really comes, let's assess what those challenges are. And before you, what you can see is high employment, depressed residential property values, no residential development activity at all, slow recovery, and you can also see what I've emphasized, if you've seen our council meeting, is that we need to be totally self-reliant. We need to create our own environment, create our own destiny, and create our own opportunities amongst ourselves. Because as you have seen in the world today, if we cannot act for ourselves through our public participation and create the necessary steps to employ, the outside entities will take a long time to be able to arrive on our doorstep. And what do we recognize in that? We have some interesting objectives for our development success. And creating jobs is important, but our unemployment rate has really put us in an interesting spot. What could those particular jobs be? And while I won't read all of those things, you have them before you. And what I can really tell you is that it is very important for us to understand that in this particular announcement tonight, and let me tell you what it is that in our initial 2011 Economic Development Plan, we had two specific areas to focus on: healthcare and health services, in the development of a medical corridor plan. In that plan, I'm going to chat about very briefly. And then second was the question of logistics, but not just logistics, in the definition of what many of us understand that to be, and that is forklifts and warehousing and low employment jobs in terms of wages. That is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a second generation of manufacturing, of second generation of logistics that will be on a 40 million square foot campus that will put Moreno Valley not only on the map within California, will be the largest sustainable development community of any kind in the nation. And what do I mean by that? We are looking, and you'll have distinguished panelists up here today who are going to speak. We just can't put 40 million square feet up. We have to make sure it's environmentally sensitive. We have to make sure that it's fully sustainable in terms of self-sufficiency, and we have to make sure it has the number one highest ratio of technological advances that put us at the forefront of development while being sensitive to the environment and having the first and foremost sensitivity to the mountains and the wetlands that are specifically to the east end. That is our number one issue, or we wouldn't even be here tonight. And so we want to be able to tell you that employment in the logistic field is truly the new manufacturing. And why do I say that? Because as we all sit here today and we recognize the clothes we wear, there's probably 10 different countries that we're wearing tonight, from your shoes to your glasses to your cell phone and to the parts in that cell phone. But there's a higher correlation that's even important to us, and that is it is truly a fundamental fact that there's a high correlation between jobs to housing. And the Moreno Valley City Council recognized that, and we changed our housing element last year to be able to reflect a fundamental change in the way we have seen our lives in the last 50 years. And what we have seen is that housing has always driven our economy and our markets, and we've always waited for housing to come back. And what I have said is housing will not come back under any circumstance in the next 10 years, under any circumstance. So we have to retool our economy and rethink who we are with the intent of bringing jobs immediately. Now, creating jobs isn't like driving through Burger King where you can get a Whopper and the fries and it's out by the drive-thru. Creating the necessary infrastructure improvements are utmost fundamental for us to be able to create an environment where people want to be. And the world is not regional anymore, and it's certainly not with state vision. The world is now very global. And so we have to think beyond Riverside County. We need to think beyond the state of California boundaries. And we certainly need to think well beyond the nation to look at the world and say, we are truly entering into a new phase of logistics where it is a global market, and those that arrive first create the employment first, which lower our ability to be able to tell people, we can't help you until that mystical hand of development shows up. If we took that approach, we will not survive. Why is logistics important, and why am I saying to you tonight, and recognizing that there is a kaleidoscope of perspective and opinion? And that is because the opinion ought to be aired and ought to be shared. But let me say one thing about why it's important to us today. When you look at this particular slide, what it really tells you is, if you look where Moreno Valley is at, it's actually at the very bottom with regards to total amount of industrial park zoning. And you can see that the leaders of Ontario, Chino, Fontana, Rancho Cucamonga, and Riverside have a higher ratio of industrial-type logistics warehousing. Why is this important? Because it's one piece of what I'm suggesting to you that is already a phenomenon that is occurring in Southern California, but more importantly in our backyards. And that is, this number is so low. When we get to some other slides, you'll see that they correlate directly and immediately to jobs which we desperately need to have, whether they're construction, whether they're infrastructure improvements, or whether they're the second generation of logistical jobs which we can produce. The bottom line here is that Moreno Valley is at the bottom of that food chain. Now, I can tell you right now, good, bad, or indifferent, that within the last 5 years, there's been over 100 square million feet of industrial space built around us. And to bring that into perspective, for those of us who know San Bernardino County well, there was a community once upon a time who had a no-growth label in Redlands. Well, if you've driven the 10 freeway, you can see that between Citrus and California, there is logistics occurring there at a very high pace, and they have not built out. So they now have recognized that in order to capture what Dr. Houston's going to talk about, and that is we have to understand what our population is and where they stand in terms of socioeconomic status to be able to move them from where they're currently at to the middle class. And Dr. Houston will talk about that. This slide represents, as I mentioned to you before, that we are at the bottom of that schism. This next slide, what you see here are a variety of cities with developed square feet in the millions, the size by square miles, and the number of jobs it produces. Now, why is that important? Look at what Ontario is at in terms of what is produced in terms of jobs, Fontana, and in particular Riverside. Now, Riverside is our competitor. They already know and have already moved on to another phase of development. They already know they've captured their piece of the pie, and believe it or not, our piece of the pie is still dead last. So you can see we have industrial space issues. We're last in jobs, and we're last in square feet in terms of millions. This is a slide that should resonate with everyone tonight, and those of us who know people that have lost their homes, and certainly with those people with extreme high anxiety. on the potential to lose their homes. You are not alone tonight. We are thinking of you all the time in terms of how we employ you to take that stress factor away immediately. And none of us up here tonight, Barry Foster and myself in this council, we're not going to rest till we employ you. And how are we going to do that? When you see this jobs to housing ratio, you can really see the number 0.58. And you can see some of the big players, Riverside in Ontario and Rancho Cucamonga, that ratio of jobs to housing, our number is so bad that it doesn't even rank for the second largest city in the county. This number is unacceptable. To believe that we should settle for no vision, no plan, and no opportunities to say to you tonight, under any circumstances, that there'll be a better arena or a better venue to employ our unemployment number of 13.8 or 14 immediately. That's not going to ever happen. The reality is this number tells you that we have knowingly been asleep as our neighboring cities have passed us and left us with the highest employment number, and that is absolutely unacceptable for the second largest city in the county. And for every business group I've ever talked to, our number one measure is we will not turn a blind eye to the blue-collar worker who wants that job today and in the next 2 years. As I'm about to tell you, we think we can get there. Strategies. It all starts with a plan. We've created a plan with the direction of the mayor and council, which we have identified areas of opportunity. Those areas we're going to talk about a little bit later, but we did those in March. We also adopted an economic development plan in April, and we also updated the housing element to change it from what we used to think housing to land to jobs to land. How important is that issue? It is telling you right now housing is not coming back under any circumstances. Establish prioritized goals. We did that with the mayor and council. And we've recently adopted steps to make Moreno Valley the best place to do business. Now, all of us surely have stories about how we've encountered probably bad experiences at City Hall. But I will tell you now that the Development Department, with Barry Foster's leadership, and the leadership of Ann Schneider in Building and Safety, and the leadership of John Terrell in Planning, and the leadership of Mark Zambito in Land Development, we are truly committed to making the process more customer-friendly, more user-friendly, where your experience, whether it's a patio or whether you're developing a building or bringing a business, we must improve the time it takes to go through the process, the way you view our service towards you, and the ability to give confidence to you that we are not just tasking, we are tasking with a specific purpose to achieve a specific result in a specific amount of time that you can quantifiably measure based upon the data that I've just shown you today. Strategic economic development, other actions. We've reorganized some of the development department services. You know, you've always heard of bureaucratic red tape. Well, I'm here to tell you all the red tape now belongs with Barry Foster. All of it. Land development, building, planning, building and safety, code are all within that particular division. And all those individuals and all those members, whether they're here tonight or at City Hall today or tomorrow, are committed to making this development plan work. Collaboration with developers to advance projects. I will tell you 2 stories before we get into other slides. If you've been to our South Industrial Park, you have clearly seen the development of 2 to 3 buildings. Those buildings are going up, and believe it or not, to show you the state of the economy, they are the only buildings going up anywhere. The other week, well, I won't say the other week, the last 2 months, we've had a major player come into our community with a development plan that you can get online and has told us unequivocally, can you get us here in 2012 by October? And we said absolutely. That kind of activity we are not ready to announce today, but I will tell you, we have corporate America waking up to Moreno Valley's plan that this is the place to bring your logistical center and your health and wellness medical campus and corridor to employ individuals as soon as possible. How are we doing? I'm going to turn this over to Barry Foster, the development director, the person. Take a good look at him. He's responsible for land development, building and planning, building and safety, land development, and he's the focal point for bringing development activities here. So we've talked about some things in a very, very global sense. But let me say to you, the announcement tonight of the 40 million square feet represents a fundamental shift in the way we think, in terms of thinking small to thinking big, in terms of pretending like we're in the game or we're really contending for the big prize. Think of what I've said here. If we do it environmentally correct, if we do it technologically correct, if we do it with the best advances in infrastructure and still preserving the quality of the air and the environment in that area, and when you see the presentations on the data, if we can get there and put us on the map, we're not just going to be a Riverside County player, we're going to be a national player. And with that, what I'd like to do is turn it over to Barry Foster, and then he'll turn it back to me, and I'll introduce our first guest.
Thanks, Henry. How are we doing? You know, there's a lot has happened the last year. You know, overall, I think I would give us a grade of a B+. If you look at the state of the economy, things are pretty sluggish. There's very slow growth as projected. That's a pretty good grade, a B+. You know, we're not satisfied with that, though. We want to strive to be the best. We're really pushing to achieve an A. No, in fact, we want an A+. You can't just talk the talk. You need to be able to walk the walk, and that's what it's all about. It's a very competitive marketplace, and we're trying to be the very best place to do business. And that resonates from the city council to the city manager to all the staff. We have the team. This is the right place. We have a lot of quality developers, and we're certainly trying to make things happen. If you look at just some of the things that we've been able to accomplish during the last year, sales tax revenue is up. We had an 8.4% increase in 2011. We've had 7 straight quarters of sales tax growth. Now, that followed 11 straight quarters of decline during that period that everybody called the Great Recession. We weren't unique. Everybody had that decline in the inland region. But things are improving. Things are getting better. We have more sales tax revenue coming in. We had strong business attraction efforts, and we have more and more quality businesses that we're working with that are on the way. We can't announce a lot of those, but we have a number of irons in the fire. We've had significant industrial development underway. We have just a 2% vacancy rate. We have filled up this misconception that there's vacant warehouses all over Moreno Valley is just flat out wrong. We don't have any. We have a 2% vacancy rate. We need to produce more logistics and distribution product. We need to build more buildings, and that's what we're striving to do. You know, Moreno Valley might be one of the strongest industrial development marketplaces in the country right now. We work with a lot of top-notch developers that have said, you have more things under construction and in the pipeline and you're working with than really any place across the country. Unemployment, we started last year with the 16.8% unemployment rate. It's dropped 2 points. It's down to 14.8. That's not good enough. We need to continue to lower that number. We need to continue to aggressively produce jobs. We've had 5 straight months of unemployment going down. We need to continue that trend. We need to produce more jobs in this community. Residential property values, they really have been sluggish the last few years. They're starting to stabilize. We still need a lot of growth. In fact, the numbers just came out today where in the month of December, residential values for resales were up 3%. At least we're going in the right direction. But we can't count on new residential development. It's just not going to happen anytime soon. I don't care who you talk to. I don't care what expert you listen to, it's just not coming back anytime soon. With the leadership of the City Council, we've established some core values for really looking to properly plan for new development in the community. You know, as the city manager talked about, we are committed to excellence in customer service. We are striving for excellence in customer service and working with a number of developers to advance projects as quickly and effectively as possible. Clearly, we're aggressively working to address that jobs to housing balance. 0.58 is unacceptable. We need to be over 1. We need to be up more like 1.5 or more. That is our number one goal, is to produce jobs in this community for folks that live here, so they don't have to drive off to Orange County or LA County or even to Ontario. We want to have employment opportunities for the people that live here. The City Council took a very bold move. There's not a lot of cities that have combined planning, building and safety, land development, along with economic development. It really is a comprehensive package. It puts everything kind of under my shoulders, but we've got really a vision where we're trying to do that comprehensive approach to development services. Again, you can't just talk the talk, you need to be able to walk the walk. And again, we're pursuing new development opportunities in 2 key areas. It's medical and healthcare, and it's logistics and distribution. If you drill down to the demographics of Moreno Valley and the Inland region, that's the opportunities that we have to bring business here and to employ people that live in our community. We need to achieve results. We need to be first to market. Being first to market will allow us to be first to jobs. It's a very competitive business, and we want to be the best. We want to achieve the results. We want to bring the jobs here. The Development Services team, I know, is committed to this. We want to be quicker. We want to be better than other cities. It really resonates through all the team. I don't care who it is in Development Services. The enthusiasm level from now to a year ago or 2 years ago, it has changed significantly. People are enthused about seeing things happen, about development coming back. And they've drank the juice, and they are committed to making Moreno Valley a best place to do business. We worked with developers to restart plan checks. We have worked with developers to start construction projects. We have several projects, large-scale projects under construction in the South Moreno Valley industrial area. We're planning for a number of new development projects, quality development projects, in several areas of the community. We've seized opportunities for business expansion and new major users. All of this is aimed at job creation right here in Moreno Valley. And that's both construction jobs, short-term, but then long-term with new employment opportunities for our folks that live here. It's unacceptable for folks not to have an employment opportunity in the community that they live in. You know, the ED action plan really is it's the cornerstone what we're trying to do with economic development. And it was adopted just 9 months ago, but it's already achieving a lot of success and results throughout the community. You can see the map that we've got 5 geographic areas spread and distributed throughout the community. If you look at some of the opportunities that we have, you know, we've done a lot in Town Gate. We've brought back and filled up some of the spaces there. We've brought in Panera Bread, Buffalo Wild Wings, Anna's Linens. We're bringing TJ Maxx and Home Goods next August. The Moreno Valley Mall, we're working with them, with a new owner, trying to stabilize and expand that shopping center. And we have some exciting things that are on the way there. We employed Harbor Freight just across the street, and they opened up just a couple of months ago. They've got 2 shifts now with 250 jobs, and they're still hiring people. In fact, they just are talking to us about an expansion of that facility, and they've only been open a couple of months. And in the South Moreno Valley area, we've been able to expand iHerb. They were open less than a year. Philips Electronics expanded, employed about 150 more people. Harman Kardon took their whole building. Ross's doubled to about 1.6 million square feet. And then if you look at other things, we've got 2 buildings with 1.5 million square feet under construction. There are 2 more ready to start, where we've got major negotiations going on with world-class tenants. They're the names that everybody in this audience will know and really embrace. And we've got more coming. But really, if you look at the opportunities I think that we have to take that next step, once we fill that area in the South Industrial area, and it will fill pretty quickly, is we need to look at where's the next generation, where's the next opportunities. The next opportunity is Eastern Moreno Valley. You have a lot of undeveloped property. You have a lot of it that has really one ownership, so you're really working with one developer, one business person. If you look at the Eastern Moreno Valley area, we opened up Skechers and 1.8 million square feet, world-class company. We have people that say, you remember when everybody talked about, well, we're going to have gridlock. The 60 freeway will be shut down when Skechers opens up. You'll never be able to get out on the 60. We have people now coming in saying, when's Skechers going to open up? It opened up 4 months ago. Skechers has 34 trucks a day. It just doesn't produce the kinds of things that people said it was going to produce. But it has 575 jobs there, and at other periods of time, they swell and employ more people. Again, it's a world-class company that made a world-class investment and wanted to come to this community. We want to capitalize on that and have more things happen. But if you look at Eastern Moreno Valley, it's an opportunity to master plan. It's an opportunity to target major businesses and corporate entities to come there, to come to Moreno Valley. And again, we can focus on the growing business sectors. And Dr. Husing will talk about that too. It's what we can achieve. It's what we can attract. It's what really the folks that live here can do in terms of jobs. And that's medical and healthcare and logistics and distribution. And all of that for the East End is really aimed at addressing that jobs to housing imbalance. We need to do a better job with that. Again, if you look at Eastern Moreno Valley and the Rancho Balago and the city center area, it's an opportunity. There's tremendous future development opportunities. That will be the job center for this community in the future. That's where the economic growth will happen in the community. That really it's the future of Moreno Valley. And if you look at the city center area, it has a lot of the major stakeholders. You've got Moreno Valley College. You've got 2 hospitals with over 550 beds. Major investment there. You have 2 major shopping centers. You have an auto mall. You have a lot of new homes that were built there the last cycle. There's a lot of concentration there. But what's the challenge? The challenge is having the infrastructure in place to keep up with more growth there, to really help stabilize what's there already. And so we've done kind of a very bold move, and the City Council has supported this. Rather than do a sidewalk project here and another little road project here, we took all our capital improvement dollars and we concentrated them at one area, the city center area, to help stabilize and support all those things I talked about earlier. We have invested, or are investing, $75 million in capital improvement projects in that area of the community, making a major investment in this community, getting people around in a much easier fashion. Why? The city center area, you've got the opportunity to take the 2 hospitals, and we've been able to convince Highland Fairview to take 200 acres of their property and provide a link between the Kaiser Community Hospital and the county hospital to build a world-class medical healthcare campus there, to seize those opportunities. People need more healthcare opportunities in this community, really in the region. We want to be that player. We want Moreno Valley to be the place. And we think we can make it happen. In fact, Kaiser is underway right now. They have steel going up for their new building, which will employ 167 people, and they're already talking about doing more there, more investment. Medical and healthcare is a huge field. It's a growing field. And the city manager talked a little bit about, we adopted some action steps to make Moreno Valley a best place to do business. Again, that kind of gets to the core of development services. We want to be the best. We want to be quick. We want to be effective. We want to be first to market. We want to win. You know, I think that I would suggest that we can't just sit back in Moreno Valley. We can't sit back and hope that things happen. You need to make things happen. You need to be aggressive. I think right now is Moreno Valley's time. Second biggest city in Riverside County. We need to take our place up there with Riverside, Ontario, Rancho Cucamonga, other places in this region. It's the right location. We have the right leadership in place. They're committed to making it happen. We have the right development services team. I know that without a doubt. We have the right development concepts, and you're going to hear more about that later tonight. We have the right action plan that we put in place last year, and we're committed to making that happen. And it's the right time. The future is now. The future is now. And I urge all of you to get behind us and to make Moreno Valley the right choice. In fact, make it the only choice. Again, it's about jobs, jobs, and more jobs. That ripples into everything. And it's those key sectors that we have opportunities for growth. And we say it all the time. It's medical and healthcare. It's logistics and distribution. That's the opportunities for Moreno Valley. That's the opportunities for the inland region. We want to be first to market. And here, as the city manager talked about, this is some of the management team for development services. There's a lot of very, very committed professionals that work very hard to get things done. And we are committed to get things done. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. We've said a lot of things tonight very quickly, and experience tells us that you want more. How can we be sure? Are we on the right path? And even if you don't agree with the path, what's the data that supports the key assumptions that you have? As we go further tonight and talk about the World Logistics Center, we've thought of that. Because there's many of us that are optimists and pessimists. There's many of us that are intellectually savvy. And there's many of us concerned for the overall community as a whole. Having thought about that, I've asked Dr. Husing to join us tonight. Many of you know him. He is a renowned scholar in economics and is very familiar with the Inland Empire with over 45 years of experience. I've asked him to think about our plan that we've just talked about tonight and to look at it globally in terms of how he sees logistics, healthcare and services, the development plan, with the option of being able to tell you, does it work, does it make sense, and what empirical data is back there to support it. Because in the end, we all recognize we're entitled to our opinion, but somewhere we have to hold me accountable for empirical facts that substantiate that we're making the right choices and that they didn't fall out of the sky, that there's data to support it, and that there's a reason and a purpose for us to move quickly so that we can create the jobs necessary for our community. So it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Husing.
It is a great pleasure to have this opportunity to talk with you this evening, particularly because I'm an economist, which means for the last 4 years I've been the most depressing person anybody has known. And finally, I have at least a little bit of good news that I can report, so it's nice to get to do that. My wife has been complaining that we never get invited to cocktail parties anymore. The reason why I say this is an important time is this chart. These are the bars, each represent job creation or job destruction in the Inland Empire, going back starting in 07. We go into the deep recession, the Great Recession. You can see we're losing jobs all the way through 2010. That is important because the U.S. started growing in March of 2010. You can see we're still losing jobs all the way till June of 2011. So the Inland Empire has had a much more difficult struggle than the country as a whole or even the state of California. What you see in those last 4 bars is finally we're starting to add jobs. When we take a look at what's not growing, and you've heard it several times, but this is a picture that's awfully important. This has been one of the major sectors that has driven our economy. It is construction employment, and what you see there is even in 2011, when we started growing, the construction sector was still peeling off jobs. A lot less than it was, but we've lost well over 50% of all the jobs in that sector. With the mortgage crisis still very much an issue for us, it's going to be a very long time before we see that sector as a whole come back as a driver of our economy. So what are the drivers? What is it that is driving it? And by the way, all of these data are public record data that you can go get. I used them in speeches all over Southern California. This was not just data created today. This particular chart I've used a lot. First of all, one of the questions I constantly ask is, what are the sectors that drive the economy, that bring money to an area, which then circulates through the community, creating additional energy as it goes through retailing and through barber shops and hair salons and all the rest. One of the ones you can see here in these yellow bars has in fact been healthcare. In fact, if you go all the way back to the beginning of the recession, there is no month when healthcare lost jobs. You can also see on the right there that the energy in the sector has picked up of late. So this is a sector that has been one of the things that has been keeping us alive, where a lot of other sectors have been in trouble. Then there is logistics. You see some negative bars in 2010. This is directly related to the worldwide downturn that occurred in the world economy and therefore affected international trade. But you can see now that it's actually surpassing medical in terms of the jobs being created out of it. When we take our full economy in October, when we created a large number of jobs, 15,000, you can see that the logistics sector by itself created 5,400 of them. 3,800 were created in healthcare. All the other sectors combined, that's everything from retail to manufacturing to construction to the legal community to the government, whatever you want to put in there, these two sectors added 56.1% of all of the jobs created in the 2 inland counties in October. So they're a very powerful piece of what we're seeing going on. I have to say, when I met with Henry the other day, they had not seen these numbers when they put their work together, and I was kind of surprised when they told me where they were headed, because I had not worked with the city on any of this, because intuitively they've got to the same place that I knew the data was taking it, just because of the kind of work that I do. Now, to kind of understand how an economy works, and there is a test, you have to pass it or you're not going to be allowed to leave tonight. If you start out and think of a gold mining town in the Old West, a Clint Eastwood movie. Now, what went on? Well, when miners dug up gold, you can't do anything with it, so you ship it away, and it brought money that supports the miners. Now, they're in the middle of nowhere, but they have needs. They need tools, they need food, so as a consequence, you have the general store. No miners, no general store. They need entertainment, so you have the saloon. They have other needs. We will stop the example at this particular point. But the fact of the matter is, the people in the saloon, the people in the general store only have work because of the gold mine. If it expands, that second tier expands with it. If it shrinks with it. Now, if we look at what's gone on in the last few years in the Inland Empire, a huge sector was residential construction. Now, what happened in this sector? Well, that sector was responsible in the modern economy for, on the left, consumer services, lawyers, local banking, things like that, and on the right, retail. Those were the secondary tier that the residential construction industry, by bringing money to the region that came out of the banking system worldwide, was helping propel. This sector declined by $10.6 billion through the course of the recession. It's about a 1-to-1 ratio in terms of additional work created, or additional energy created in the secondary tier. It turns over about one more time before the money moves away. So you have a sector that cost us $21.6 billion of economic energy when it shrank. Now, our economy is only a $120 billion economy. That is a huge hole. And it is why the kind of unemployment rates you've read in the newspaper have been occurring. Now, if we take away those sectors and we say, all right, what can you replace them with? Medical care, as you saw in the previous chart, was one of them. Another one is logistics and distribution. Both of these sectors bring money from the outside world. If you think about how medical care is funded, it is largely funded by insurance, by Medicare, Medi-Cal, all sorts of things like that. Logistics, essentially what we're handling is international trade, so it's money flowing here that otherwise wouldn't be here that supports that secondary sector. Now, I did my own work, and this is where you can see it's not the same, but the most recent data I have, instead of 0.58, had Moreno Valley at 0.49 in terms of jobs, housing, balance. The average for Southern California, as you can see, and this is in 2010, was 1.02. Now, all of these numbers are depressed because the whole region was having employment problems. But if the average is 102 and you're at 49, you are half of what you should have. Now, so what? That chart says one thing. If you live in Moreno Valley, you're going to be a commuter. You're going to have to go work elsewhere, which is a huge issue for any community. Absentee parents, all of the rest of that occurs as a consequence. If we go back to 2007, before this occurred, I have in Moreno Valley at 52, so about the same number as the city. The statewide average, or the Southern California average, was 125. You can see the city is well below what any of the surrounding region is in terms of its jobs, housing, balance. This is what creates the morning traffic jam. That's what you're looking at. This is why it's so tough to get on the 60 freeway, because so many other people are having to do the same thing, or taking the, the 215 south. You saw these data from the city a while ago. I'm just repeating them here because what the city essentially was designed for was housing, not jobs. If only 9% of your land is being used for industrial zoning, what you're essentially saying is this is a community that's going to be People live here, but they're going to have to work somewhere else, compared to all of the other major cities that are 100,000 or above in the Inland Empire. Now, when you look at the condition of Moreno Valley at this moment, as you heard, the city is improving on several indicators. However, if we compare to the county, we see that there is a reason why the city needs a leaning forward economic development strategy. The unemployment rate in the city in November was 14.8. It was 12.8 in Riverside County. Neither number is any good, but the city 2 points higher. The share of families in 2010 who had no health insurance, 21.1 in the county, 25.1 in the city. When we look at people below the poverty line in income, these are census data, 16.3 in Riverside County, 19.4 in Moreno Valley. Notices of default because of difficulty in housing. In the 13 months from November 2010, including that month, through November 2011, 5.8% of all the homes in Riverside County received notices of default. It was 6.3 in Moreno Valley. Retail sales in the third quarter of 2010, I didn't have the full year data, which the city apparently does now. Riverside County was up 10.2. The city at that point in that quarter was up 6.9. Apparently it's improved in the fourth quarter. And then finally, the one place where there's been an increase has been where you've had some significant industrial development raising assessed valuation. The county was off 1.6. The city was up 0.7%. That's not a huge gain, but it is the right direction, and it's the one place where the city has outperformed the county. Now, you heard a lot of things said in here about blue-collar jobs. Why is that important? And I want to confess going in, and you need to know this from an analyst, I have my own bias. The bias in my work is I am most interested in the issue of upward mobility into the middle class for people who are marginally educated. To me, that is the fundamental problem for the Inland Empire. And these data show it. If you look, for instance, in the center in Southern California, 42% of Southern Californians stopped their educations at high school or didn't get that far. In the inland region, it's 45% in Riverside. It is 49% in San Bernardino. It is 54% in Moreno Valley. Those are the folks that we really need to be understanding how do you develop a strategy that can help them go to work. If we look at the reverse of those figures, here is what you have in terms of bachelor's, master's, and above. I'm often asked when I do economic development strategy work for various communities, where are the high-end jobs? Why don't we go after them? The answer is you don't have a high-end labor force, you're not going to be able to go after high-end jobs. You can see here in Southern California as a whole, 29% of Southern Californians have a bachelor's or higher degree. By comparison, on the right, you can see the Bay Area. In the 9 counties surrounding the Bay, it is 42% of the population has a bachelor's or above. Now, there's a political issue there between the two ends of the state, because a lot of the policies of the state of California emanate from the Bay Area, where people are 42% bachelor's and above. They look at each other, they believe they are the world, they believe they are normal. Believe me, I am a fourth-generation native of Northern California. Northern California is not normal. Now, but notice when we get into the inland region, what we have in terms of people with BAs and MAs and PhDs and all the rest. It's 20% in Riverside. It's 19% in San Bernardino. It is 14% in Moreno Valley. This is not a place where you're going to easily be able to lure companies when you're competing with the Bay Area or San Diego or Orange or Ventura, where you've got the kind of labor force that they are looking for. Now, one of the things that, and these are brand-new data out this year, the Census Bureau, what do various sectors in the two counties pay on average? Mining in the Inland Empire pays $65,268. Manufacturing, $49,884. Construction, $48,444. And that's pretty high right now because a good number of the regular labor force just isn't working. Normally, the number's down a little bit, about 41. Logistics, $45,868. Now, all of those are blue-collar sectors. They are the best-paying sectors that folks who do not have good educations can go into. They don't have barriers. These are the essential alternatives for that group of people. Gaming is the best. This is Indian gaming. It's a fairly small sector, but again, you don't get to 40,000. Retail, 28, agriculture, 24, hotel and motel, 16, eating and drinking, those two are roughly the same. So what you see here is the alternative is you don't get to the middle class if you can't get through into those blue-collar sectors if you're not well educated. By the way, I love to use this chart with young people in school so I can open up the top of their head and scream at them, be dumb, be poor. Because if you can't get up to those blue-collar sectors, you are not going to be able to do well and get into the middle class. Now, what is the result of the fact that, what do we do in California? We suppress blue-collar jobs. Essentially, what that has meant, by suppressing blue-collar jobs, we don't want to see a lot of construction. We don't want to see a lot of manufacturing. We don't want to see a lot of logistics and distribution. We don't want to see mining. The net result of that is unemployment amongst the group of people who need those jobs is higher than it needs to be. Underemployment for them is a constant difficulty because the entire force of state policy is trying to suppress the kind of work that would get them to the middle class. So you have a definite lack of access to the middle class. Now, I've spent a lot of time in the last month or two, nothing to do with what we're doing here, working with Loma Linda University Medical Center's Center for Public Health, asking the question, what are the consequences of this? And the answer to that is you are creating the health issues related to poverty. There are health issues because of diet, but you also have behavioral issues in terms of pressure, which leads to divorce, spousal abuse, drug and alcohol abuse, at the worst, suicide, and clearly lack of timely medical care. I just gave a speech last week at San Antonio Medical Center in Upland. They just expanded their emergency room because for many families that is still their only medical care. Those are public health issues. So what you end up with is this contest between wanting to clean up the environment for public health, but the way we're doing it is creating public health issues of an entirely different kind that we're paying no attention to, because we're not asking the question, how can you develop in a sustainable way the kinds of blue-collar jobs that a huge part of our population needs? Now, why is there a demand for health care workers in the Inland Empire? Where does this come from? Well, the answer can be seen here. This is the number of people per health care worker. This is a chart I created for Loma Linda when we were working to try and get the University of California medical school here. And what you see here is for the state, this is the trend in the number of people per health care worker in California. You can see it's essentially flat. It's come down just ever so slightly at the end. This is what it is in the Inland Empire. It's substantially higher. We are underserved in the sense of healthcare workers to take care of our population. Now, I have a question for all of you. Have any of you at this moment given up sex? I'm a voyeur. I just kind of like that to get that in my talks. The fact of the matter is California grows. Southern California grows. It grows mostly because of births over deaths. It is us. It is our kids. It is our grandkids. That's the dynamic in growth, and it has continued all the way through this recession. The forecasts from the Southern California Association of Governments and the San Diego Association of Governments, largely based on births over deaths, a little bit of immigration, but also out-migration, which sort of roughly balanced. So it's just us. Los Angeles is expected to add between 2008 and 2035 1,542,000 people. San Diego, Orange, Ventura, and Imperial together, 1,689,000 people, and San Bernardino and Riverside counties, 210. Now, why so much? Answer, because the rest of it is out of room. Now, I mean, I guess suppose if you were a Jonathan Swift fan, you could say kill the babies or something, but the fact is we're going to grow, whether we like it or not, and we're going to have to create jobs for that growing population. Now, one of the key things is, are there skill ladders up which people can move into the middle class? Here's hospital. These are the whole list of jobs that you can find in a hospital. You can start out down here, health support occupations, nursing aides, 26, 24, not in the middle class. You stick with it, you get more training. You can get over the 40,000 up into medical and public service social workers, medical appliance technicians, those sorts of things at 55. Stick with it longer, you can come up and be a registered nurse, medical and clinical lab techs where they're making almost 80,000. There is a job ladder. You also see this in logistics, the same sort of thing. Now, why do we have a demand for logistics workers in the Inland Empire? Why is it that the vacancy rate is dropping, and that in buildings of 500,000 square feet and above, the vacancy rate is zero? There is no space. That's why they're being built. Here is a picture of industrial absorption in the inland region. This means companies migrating and taking space. Each dot is a continuing 4 quarters. You can see over on the left during the last recession, when the Cold War sort of slowed things down, it was staying right around 12,500. It soared up to 48 million at the beginning of the decade when we began to get into prosperity again. But what you see, what you see there is it dipped during the recession below zero. We lost a few firms. This again was related to the ports, and I'll show you why in a minute. But you've seen that through 2010 and going into 2011, it has soared back, and it's now at 21.6 million for the last 4 quarters put together, which is above the normal average of about 20 million square feet. So this is a very dynamic sector that continues to expand. The vacancy rates were down very low. They were just around 3% in the whole region. They went up to over 12, but they're back down now to just over 5. So, and that's for all space, big and little. As I said, for the large spaces, you could see it's the vacancy rate for the big facilities is virtually down to zero. Now, what this is about really is, to a large extent, international trade. I like to say that the California legislature has done one thing absolutely right. They put California on the West Coast. The result of that is when goods leave Asia and they're headed for the 48 states, where do they hit first? They come to California. Actually, they can come to Vancouver, they can come to Prince Rupert Island in Canada, to Seattle, Tacoma, or to LA, Long Beach. They can't, and the big ships that carry this stuff can't go in the Bay Area, it's too shallow. The other thing that happened was they pulled all the oil out from underneath San Pedro Bay, down offshore from L.A. and Long Beach harbors, and the bottom sank. And there's a brilliant long-term economic strategy, because it meant that ships that need 50 feet of water can all come into L.A. Long Beach. The result of that, you can see the whole Asian move of international trade with manufacturing leaving the U.S., and it's, by the way, why we're talking about logistics and not manufacturing. You can see the China trade, the Philippines trade, India, go all the way up to 8.2 million 20-foot equivalent containers. That's how we measure them. We take a container and say, in 20-foot equivalent units, how many did we have? We had 8.2 million loaded containers enter in 2006. 2007, you saw the first hit of the difficulty when it slowed to 8. Then the recession hit worldwide, slowed trade, and it went down to 6. That was a little over 25% drop. But we had a big increase in 2010, one of the largest increases in history, and it's that move that has really been powering job growth out here, and we held it in 2011. When we look at the other direction, goods leaving the U.S., that is us exporting, what are we seeing? In 2011, we had a record of 3.27 million containers loaded, leaving with goods. So we're actually, and this is really, some of this is important in the inland region. For instance, agricultural products out of the Coachella Valley brings money into that piece of the economy. But it also means that we can, in fact, maybe now compete for some production that goes offshore. That, by the way, is the most of any harbor complex in the United States in history. We've never had a number of that from any port, L.A., Long Beach, New York, New Jersey, whatever. So it's a record. So what is the job and financial impact of logistics alone? This is now looking forward. One of the things that economists do is we do modeling. It's a piece of what I spend a lot of my life doing. If you build in Moreno Valley, 40 million square feet of space, construction costs on average are $93.69 a square foot. That comes off from RS Means, which is a major data source on this sort of stuff. You're talking about $3.747 billion worth of construction activity. You got 40 million at 93, $3.7 billion worth of activity. Now, that creates jobs in the construction sector. The direct effect of that output of 37476 that you see on the right, when you put this through the modeling economists traditionally use, it's a model called M-Plan developed by the University of Minnesota, what we find is 30,337 construction jobs with a payroll of $1.8 billion going to those workers. Now, remember the model that I said you couldn't leave unless you remembered it. The secondary effect of those workers taking the money and spending it in Moreno Valley. I wasn't looking at the whole region, but only in Moreno Valley. The secondary effect would be another 1.2 billion altogether. Payroll would be roughly another 429 billion. That's the indirect and induced effect. And roughly another 10,000 jobs created. So altogether, throughout the whole construction period, you would create 40,316 jobs to build that. A payroll would be 2.2 billion, and the output would be $5 billion worth of output. Now, that's the whole thing if you built it in 1 year, which obviously you're not going to do. So I divided by 10 just to say, let's say it took 10 years. On average, how many jobs would you be adding in the construction sector each year? And it's 4,000. How much payroll a year? 223 million. Remember, that payroll hits the economy. That's the total payroll, including the secondary effects, as it hits the economy. So you see a very large impact on construction. Now, is this sort of thing feasible? I remember in 1965, driving down the freeway. I'd been running a casino in Nevada. I came back in 65, driving through Ontario, and there was one little lonely building sitting out at the corner of the 10 and the 15 for Blaupunkt, which is a German auto electrical company. Today, that area has 98 million square feet of space. It had that little building back in those days. And it did it in about 10 years. So this is very much the experience we've seen. Now, that's during the construction phase. What about once it's done, at build-out, what does it look at? You've got 40 million square feet, 2,000 square feet per job. Now, where does that come from? The U.S. Energy Information Agency did a study of facilities in 2003, and it was 1,906 it's 1,906 square feet per job. I wrote it backwards, my apology. I increased that 5% to say, all right, let's use 2,000 square feet per job because of technology since that study was done. That means, in round figures, 20,000 permanent jobs added in to the economy. What does logistics pay? It pays $45,868 on average. Now, one of the questions is, why don't you use medians where you look at the number in the middle? And the answer is, if you go to a warehouse and distribution center and typically talk to who's running it, you'll find everybody in that facility, almost without exception, came up through the ranks. There are no Bill Gateses working in this industry. So that the average and the median are almost identical. I've used both. These data, as I said, are official U.S. statistics. And they're the weighted average coming from work by the census in 2010. The annual payroll each year would be 917, and because of that, there would also be proprietorships, that is, entrepreneurs serving the sector, generating another $118 million. Now, when we look at the full range of direct, indirect, and induced, again, the gold mine, logistics, the secondary effects, you get 20,000 jobs, $1 billion in payroll and proprietorship income directly. The secondary effects in direct and induced, we call those. You can see there's another 8 in jobs, and there's another 4 in, or another 3 in indirect. Put it together, at build-out, the sector would be employing in the city 28,178 people with a payroll of $1.38 billion. Currently in the city, as of 2010, the city has 25,440 jobs, according to the Employment Development Department, with a payroll of $934 million. So if you look at the increase, when you add in another 28, what you end up is a total of 53,618 jobs in the city, not including what goes on in healthcare, just what's going on in logistics, $2.3 billion in additional payroll. So you've increased the economic base of the city by 111%. That's double plus a little bit, and 148% if you look at the increase in the payroll and the money made by entrepreneurs. If you then add in what would occur outside the city in Riverside County, you would add another 4,335 jobs not in Moreno Valley, and another $191 million in payroll. So the full effect in the county would be 32,513 jobs added and $1,575 million in income. These are big numbers, but this is what happens with this size of development. Now, these kinds of development also throw off taxes, to the cities, to the schools, to the county, to the special districts. If you take 40 million square feet of logistics space, at assessed valuation per square foot, I used $178.01. That happened to be the average for the Walgreens facility. You end up with new assessed valuation of $7.1 billion. The tax rate in the zone over in the east side of the city is 1.15%. The annual taxes that would be thrown off are $82.2 million. Excuse me, economists get so used to billions. Now, finally and lastly, one of the things that I have spent a good part of my career doing, because since 1964 when I started studying this region, and I did my PhD on this region, was trying to figure out how is it that you can provide upward mobility to blue-collar workers, because fundamentally that's what our population looks like, in a way that makes sense for communities. And there are good examples of this around to look at, but what you want is the following. Number one, no homes around the facilities. Number two, no schools around the facilities. Number three, no shopping centers around the facilities. And number four, direct freeway access for the facilities. You want to isolate them so that they are what they are and there's not a lot of stuff going through it. All you have to do is go down and look at the eastern part of Ontario to see this is what's done there, it's done in other places, and it is the best in the use of land if you're going to use a strategy like this, if your interest is in jobs for blue-collar workers. This is my, it should be www.johnhusing.com. If you're interested in these kind of data, there is a ton of it online at my website. I thank you very much for this opportunity.
You know, it's interesting to hear Dr. Husing, because he brings an amalgamation of opinions and predetermined thoughts with direct empirical data that you can clearly look up online for yourself and debate and think through. And as I said to you before, we asked Dr. Husing not necessarily to validate, but to be able to substantiate, are we in the ballpark? Are we on the right course? Are we making things up? And are we trustworthy in telling you tonight we clearly know it's logistics and healthcare and wellness? But there's two things I need to say before we introduce a video for you tonight, and that is Moreno Valley has now matured. We cannot allow maturity to turn into decay. We can no longer say for our next generation we are a commuter community. We cannot. The significant data that Dr. Husing showed on poverty rates and education tell us that we recognize a fundamental issue, and that is if we are to grow our own, we must be close enough to have them educated and to be close enough to have our employment sectors here, for our discretionary dollars to be spent here that ultimately come back to the services, but more importantly, to redefine that it is not okay between 2012 and 2022 to stay as we are. That message has to change if we're going to look to the school district, and we're starting to help us partner to educate people to understand we have a vision in two specific areas that are growing today. In infrastructure that Barry mentioned of $75 million is so significant, because if they don't have the infrastructure to circulate and to move, especially along the medical corridor, I often heard this analogy. You know, we're going fishing for candidates, which are corporate entities. It's not okay to fish with a pole anymore. We need to build streets and roads and bridges quickly so that we can cast a net to capture as much as corporate America as we can right now. If we use the fishing pole mentality that we think we're going to get biotech, Dr. Husing said something we don't want to hear that we have to accept. Those growth areas are in cosmopolitan areas, and to say that to our kids is wrong. But to say that you can be that biotech and doctor, we're going to provide those opportunities in the medical corridor. Our opportunity is now to change our perception, to change our comparative data to Riverside County. But really, isn't it as important for us to recognize the social health issues are of such a magnitude that we simply can't sit back and debate it anymore. We cannot have health issues, poverty, and uneducated youth reproducing itself, because Dr. Husing, and I won't go to the intimacy question, we cannot repeat that issue. We can do better. We can do better. And what I offer you tonight is we intend on doing better, but I can't do it alone, and I need your help with a clear direction tonight. Dr. Husing said it all. We have a video that I'd like to show. It's about 8 minutes. It's going to introduce what I'm defining as the World Logistics Center. So can we have the video, please?
Moreno Valley is emerging as the new gateway to the global economy. Strategically located on the Pacific Rim at the heart of Southern California, Moreno Valley is poised to become a vital connection to the global marketplace. With global trade skyrocketing to over $16 trillion and doubling in less than 7 years, international trade has become the engine of the global economy. Never in the history of the world have so many goods been manufactured and delivered to more people in more places. Logistics has become the new manufacturing. No longer can a single company master all the technologies and manufacture all the parts necessary to produce its products. Manufacturing now takes place in different areas of the world, with parts coming from a multitude of regions to be assembled in one location and then shipped to consumers. Cities and communities that are able to organize their strategies and resources to provide the necessary infrastructure and advanced corporate facilities to support global companies will position themselves in the global marketplace and reap the benefits. When it comes to global trade, Moreno Valley is ideally situated at the heart of California's Golden Triangle, consisting of Los Angeles, San Diego, and the Inland Empire. The Golden Triangle is home to the largest concentration of global leaders in the fields of trade, technology, entertainment, hospitality, and education, and is served by the nation's largest ports. Containing 1.8 billion square feet of occupied facilities, nearly half of all goods coming to the United States now flow through the Golden Triangle. The city is now poised to take advantage of this tremendous opportunity and has developed the strategies and formed the partnerships necessary to attract global companies that will provide jobs and major economic benefits to Moreno Valley and the inland region. This is Moreno Valley's time. Most of the land in Los Angeles and Orange County suitable for large-scale logistics buildings has been depleted. Supply is shrinking, demand is growing, and Moreno Valley is uniquely positioned with available land, superb transportation access, and a prime location in the strongest industrial market in the nation. In this fiercely competitive global economy, being first to market means that success or failure can come down to minutes, and the single most important distinction is getting there first. The city of Moreno Valley has developed a strategic vision and an aggressive schedule to capitalize on this incredible opportunity. Developer Highland Fairview is responding to the city's bold vision for global connectivity and economic development with a state-of-the-art next-generation logistics center. The new project, the World Logistics Center, will encompass over 40 million square feet of facilities and will be the largest master-planned logistics corporate park in the nation. The new World Logistics Center will set a new standard and catapult Moreno Valley as a leader in innovation and advanced logistics technologies. construction of the World Logistics Center will bring substantial benefits to the economy of Moreno Valley and the entire region. The project is expected to create tens of thousands of jobs and billions in investments and annual economic benefits. The project will produce the largest economic stimulus our region has seen. Demand for local real estate will naturally occur, supporting higher values for local housing. This project will also improve our quality of life, providing shorter commutes to residents and those locally employed. Designed to be one of the most innovative, sustainable developments in the U.S., the environment is at the core of the World Logistics Center's plan. It will not only feature superior design and architecture, it will attempt to establish modern and groundbreaking sustainability features, such as reaching near net zero water usage for irrigation. The World Logistics Center facilities will be designed to achieve LEED certification through energy efficiency, thermal comfort, water conservation, state-of-the-art design, and the use of recycled and eco-friendly building materials where appropriate. The project will build upon the environmentally friendly design and experience achieved in the recently opened Skechers facility in Rancho Belago. The 1.8 million square feet building is the largest LEED-certified building of its type in the United States, and is an excellent example of how green development can be seamlessly integrated with large-scale commercial projects. The Highland Fairview World Logistics Center team is comprised of international leading companies, including Balfour Beatty Parsons Brinkerhoff, a global engineering and design firm with over 54,000 employees across 80 countries, and is currently ranked #1 in the world in road and highway, bridges, airports, and mass transit categories. CH2M Hill, a global full-scale design firm named one of the world's most ethical companies 3 years in a row. SWA, a leading international planning firm that has received over 600 awards since its inception. Leeton, a geotechnical company at the forefront of green construction with over 50 years of proven experience. Michael Brandman Associates, a comprehensive environmental planning firm that has served thousands of major clients. Rutan and Tucker, a national leading land use law firm guiding the team to ensure utmost CEQA compliance and defensibility, and Baker and Hostetler, one of the largest law firms in the country with more than 700 attorneys serving clients throughout the world, 10 of which are on Fortune 25's top-paying companies. The time for bold action is now. We have an opportunity to establish Moreno Valley as a global hub for logistics and position it as a leader at the forefront of tomorrow's economy. The city and the developer look forward to gathering public input regarding this project and working in conjunction with local businesses, residents, and community leaders to realize an economic development strategy for the East End in which we can all prosper. Working together, we can soar.
Thank you to the Moreno Valley Television Group, which again continues to astound me in terms of their creativity. This is actually my first real take at looking at this, and they assured me, like the state of the city, that they would hold up to the caliber that we expect from them. So my sincere thank you to them. You know, we're at the point tonight where we must talk about something regarding our partnership with Highland Fairview. We have asked them to assemble the best in the world to bring to Moreno Valley, not only recognition, but the very things I mentioned to you at the beginning. We have to lead in technological innovations. We have to lead in being the greenest building possible, and we have to lead at getting to market first. We cannot be a community which settles for second. We have to be there first to market, and we have to be there expeditiously in a way with confidence that we can demonstrate before you. But I've learned a lot in my 11 months. And sometimes it may appear that I don't listen well, and perhaps that is true. But what I did listen to was a concern about many of you that are here tonight that I recognize about the environment and how important that is to preserve it and to respect it and to give its due diligence in terms of how it integrates a very core value in Moreno Valley, but complement itself with a logistics center. And so we've tasked Highland Fairview with assembling the best of the best so that we can assure you that we're very concerned about that. And hopefully in the video you saw that Highland Fairview has demonstrated that by bringing together those particular skill sets that were mentioned. But I've gone one step further. I've taken it upon myself to reach out to Dr. Krantz, who is a renowned leader in environmental research. He is here tonight, and Dr. Timothy Krantz is a professor of environmental studies at the University of Redlands. He has over 30 years of experience in environmental assessment, land use planning, environmental quality control, National Environmental Policy Act, and I've asked him to take a look at what we've said tonight, and we have chatted before this evening, to be able to give us his perspective on how can we truly share with you our commitment to the environment. And as he goes through some of his slides, I want to assure you that we're at the very beginning process, and there's going to be many opportunities to weigh in. But I've asked Dr. Krantz tonight to join us to give his initial view on the World Logistics Center. So will you help join me in welcoming Professor Krantz?
Hello, and it is my great pleasure to speak to you all tonight and to see that you've all hung out through this entire presentation this evening. I'm particularly excited to work with the City of Moreno Valley and Highland Fairview to demonstrate that environmental protection, green buildings, and logistics centers in particular can work hand in hand and actually enhance each other to create a better environment in that particular area and a better work environment for the people that will work there. In particular, sustainable development, what does that mean? That means development that can be sustained over a prolonged time, not just for people and jobs and the economy, but also for the environmental resources that come to bear in such project. I'll focus on just 4 of these sustainable development areas tonight. However, the broad spectrum of resource management and environmental planning goes into planning for these types of projects. In particularly, we'll look at green building and how that can work in such a complex, air quality, water resources, and open space planning. Green building, that is buildings that not only can use less energy and be sustained by that, but also enhance the work environment for people there, are best exemplified, I think, by the Skechers building itself. The Skechers building is the largest LEED certified building, or will be, in the United States, and perhaps one of the largest buildings in the world. LEED is a program created by the U.S. Green Building Council that stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. There are several categories in the LEED program. LEED New Construction, for one, exemplifies buildings that meet sustainable energy use, water use, recycled content, interior developments that also produce less volatile chemicals and other things for a better indoor work environment and workers' quality of life there. It also includes the neighborhood. It's not just inside the building, but also in the immediate area around the building. So it looks at stormwater prevention and pollution plans that can be integrated with treatment wetlands and other types of projects, such as here at the Skechers building. One of the things that we're contemplating in the World Logistics Center will be a net zero irrigation, where all of the facilities will be sustained by stormwater runoff from rooftops, from parking lots that's collected into treatment wetlands, can be reused in irrigation supplies on site, such that there will be no runoff from the logistics center itself. It will all be self-contained and work with the water resources that we can use as an amenity for not just people and the workers that work here, but also for the environment and wildlife. In terms of air quality, the LEAD program looks at indoor environments for creating a better air quality by using non-VOC volatile organic compounds that would be in the types of formaldehyde or other types of fiber boards or other things that produce potentially unhealthy chemicals in the worker's environment. So by reducing those down to zero, we can actually create a better air quality in the buildings themselves. We can look at integrating clean energy programs such as photovoltaics on rooftops and ground source heat pumps, other types of renewable energies that will greatly reduce the actual amount of energy used in running the building, but also produce an alternative for running and lighting the facilities and other things. Not to mention the fact that by creating jobs and logistics centers here in the local area, you won't be needing to drive or commute to other areas in Los Angeles or Orange County, greatly reducing the amount of vehicle air emissions that will be produced for each of those jobs created. And Moreno Valley is uniquely situated for a logistics center in particular, where trucks that load here will not have to deal with the traffic congestion of Los Angeles or Orange County. That means much less time spent in traffic jams and idling, but actually more productive time for each of those truck operating hours, such that eastbound trucks won't have to deal with the Los Angeles congestion whatsoever. This is going to relieve the congestion for the entire Inland Empire and the Los Angeles, Orange County metropolitan area by taking those jobs out of those already congested freeways. This will then contribute to a lessening of actual air quality and air emissions for not just the trucks on the road, but the people that are driving to those jobs. So in the end, these various different practices will meet or exceed the Air Quality Management District's emission standards for this project. Water resources are another one of the most sensitive resources here in Southern California. 10% of all of the energy we use in Southern California is just on pumping water from Northern California or other places so that we can use it and have it come conveniently out of our taps. In this case, we would plan to completely integrate stormwater runoff from parking lots and rooftops into the irrigation systems, together with treatment wetlands that can use wastewater from those facilities. And there are a great many opportunities here where these types of treatment wetlands can actually provide really nice, relaxing environments where the water itself acts as part of the landscape, where when you're on your lunch break, you can go and sit out in a pond or a nice fountain environment in the cool shade of a tree grown with gray water and not be using imported water for any of those uses. Finally, the open space that's anticipated in the 40 million square foot logistics center would still represent virtually 50% of the actual open space that you find of the 2,000 to 3,000 acre logistics center park. That, if you look at that area today, it's mostly dry farmed barren fields. But with the project, we'll actually be able to afford to turn that into a valuable habitat, an open space for people, for recreation, and for wildlife. These treatment wetlands, for example, are thriving areas for birds and fish that are planted in those types of facilities. All of this enhances the actual property values of the open space and the built environment around it. In conclusion, I'm very excited to be able to work with the City of Moreno Valley on integrating these environmental measures into the Logistics Center project in particular. And Moreno Valley has a unique opportunity here to actually establish itself as a real leader in proving that these kinds of developments can in fact enhance the environment, not just for people, but also for other natural resources. By taking the lead in environmental technology development in photovoltaics, in ground source heat pumps, and other types of renewable energy technologies, this will be in and of itself an attraction for other companies to come and site their own logistics facilities here, where the return on investment on those types of developments is one of the biggest growth sectors in the job markets in California, even during the recession. This has been one of the only shining lights in the job market in California, has been on the renewable energy and clean energy sector. This will then act as a domino effect for creating green workplaces, green jobs, makes it more attractive for other companies to site their facilities here. So I would conclude by saying that sustainable development and logistics centers and these types of projects can in fact work hand in hand, and one enhances the other. One makes it more attractive for the other, and we can create this such that this would make a better environment for the workers and for the natural resources that we all use and enjoy here in Moreno Valley. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Krantz. At this particular point, what I'd like to do in looking at the audience is acknowledge some very important people. And so I'd be remiss and apologize if I don't see you all, but I want to acknowledge first off that Mayor Stewart is here. Mayor. Councilmember Coe. Councilmember Molina in the back. We also have, and I've just got to say this in my limited time, I really believe of all 5 supervisors, we absolutely have the best in Marion Ashley. He is here today. I have never been in a room with an elected official that makes the same calls to solve problems while I'm still in the room. That's Marion Ashley, solving it the same time I'm in a room. I've never seen it in 31 years. Ever. I appreciate that. The other person that's here is our Chancellor of RCC, Mr. Gray. Mr. Gray? Chancellor Gray and his vision for capital projects are catapulting our Moreno Valley College in terms of health care forward in unimaginable ways that are going to be tremendously beneficial to our medical health care corridor. And so my thank you for your time. For being here tonight. I also see David Slauson from EMWD. He is here. And you know, I just got to tell you, with this light on me, I am not sure whether there's anyone else that is here, but if there is, Mr. Davis, I apologize, RCC Board of Trustees. Thank you for being here also, Moreno Valley resident. Correct? That's correct. Tonight, our intent was to introduce a concept, but we recognize public participation is important. So let me say this. We have got a hotline, we've got that you can call, and a website that you can go to. We're going to start with those 2. Our intent is to really tell you this. It's informational tonight. It's exciting for us. It's visionary for us. We've brought experts for you to help digest. We don't want you to feel you don't have an opportunity to speak, but there's going to be a variety of other potential forums to do that in, and there's also going to be 4 specific areas in which you can speak in. The notice of preparation for the EIR, the notice of availability of the draft EIR, the Planning Commission, and the City Council public hearings. We're going to take the information from the hotline, and as we get ready to have another public forum, we're going to structure that in a very different way, all with the intent of taking the necessary input to help make this process your process. And so it will be deliberate and methodical with our intent to answer as many questions as possible to solve the concerns that you have brought either through an email to me or through conversations with your elected officials. I know it's been a long night. I know I am grateful for the opportunity you have taken to come out here, but I have to say this, and I said it when I first came to Moreno Valley, we are not going to settle for second to anyone. Anyone. And we have to back that up. If we all have a common thought and a common place and a vision and a timeline, our success is ours to create, and our failure is ours to be ashamed of. Have a good night. I look forward to seeing you at the next forum. Thank you for being here.